Okay, everybody. Today we have a very distinguished gentleman across the pond, as they say in America. Nadim Sadek, how are you today, sir?
I'm very well, Kevin, and I'm honored to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
I am honored, and I'm honored to talk to you about this book, Shimmer, Don't Shake.
Look at you with a real live copy of it.
I do have a real life copy of it. How publishing can embrace AI. So I got the book. You told me before we were setting up the interview that it was a quick read, and it's a very quick read. It's a very tight book.
Have you got beyond page 3 in truth? In truth now.
In truth, I have gone past page 3. I might have bounced around a bit, but yes, I have gone past page 3.
All right. You did well. You did well to get it, and thank you for dipping into it. That's great.
No problem. Before we get into the book, you had a YouTube channel called Boss Bikes Club.
I did.
I am not a bike rider, but I'm amazed by bikes, by those motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
As we end 2023, is there a bike this year that you said, "Oh, this is a really cool bike that I like this year"?
Oh, Kevin, you're taking us down a bad path here. I've got on my Google Keep account a list of 22 motorcycles. That is my short list of stuff I really want.
Oh wow!
So I saved my promiscuity for motorbikes.
Because I was reading, your fascination started when you was 10 years old. So you're not just someone to say, "Hey, I'm doing my bucket list thing." You've been doing this for a long time.
I've been on bikes for a really long time. It's I try to keep myself away from recreational things that could do me more damage than a motorbike. So what I've done historically is when I travel, because I've traveled around the world quite a lot, is I always take a couple of cameras. I get in touch with a few dealers because I don't try to do it through the manufacturers. I like to talk to the real people on the ground, meet the communities. And so instead of sitting at the bar all night in a hotel with nobody to talk to, I go and I meet motorcycling dealers and riders there, and we go for rides together, and I do a review. And it's been fantastic fun over the years.
Yeah, Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead, he has a motorcycle show on AMC where he talks to different celebrities and they drive around. So was your show, what you do, is it kind of like the same that you got whoever you have with you, you just drive around and talk, or is just?
It started that way, but then the production got a bit complicated. So in the end, what I did was I decided everybody does 15 to 20-minute reviews. I never find the time to listen to those or watch them. So I do kind of 5 to 8-minute reviews, and they're kind of half travelogue. We're in Dubai today, we're in Atlanta today, we're in Shanghai today, and we're riding a bike, and I talk about it. So the viewer gets a bit of the bike and a bit of the city and a bit of chat.
That's very cool. That's what it sounds like, Anthony Bourdain with motorcycles. So I kind of like that.
Well, I mean, again, that's flattering, but thank you. The concept is similar. I'm not sure the execution is quite as mesmerizing.
Yeah, he was great. So let's talk about the book, Shimmer, Don't Shake. So the title alone is an interesting title. How does Shimmer, Don't Shake corresponds with publishing and AI?
In publishing, there's, as in many fields and many industries, there's quite a lot of fear about what AI will do. And that's legitimate. It's fair. You know, there's lots of things that we should be cautious about and indeed even fear. And that would be the shake in our boots end of things. However, there's a lot of stuff that's coming our way that's really cool. And indeed, it's here already that we can enjoy. And particularly in publishing, there's a fact about the publishing industry that I discovered as we were getting into it, which kind of stopped me in my tracks. And it's this. Out of the total catalog of publishers' books, and there are at least 100 million of those in English alone, 95% of them, so 95 million books, have never been publicized in any way. So they sit in the dark. And I thought we should bring them into the light and let them shimmer. So with AI, I want people to embrace AI with an optimism and a sense of opportunity and fun. And that's the Shimmer, Don't Shake. So the book itself kind of is slightly less playful, I suppose, than the title. You know, it first of all traces the history of publishing to make the point that over the millennia that it's been around, it's gone through an amazing amount of technological innovation and change. It's always kind of recoiled at it at first, then adopted it and assimilated it and improved it, and it's just become part of the industry then. And that's what I think is going to happen with AI and publishing too. And then I go through the history of publishing. Then I talk about the way they converge, the good stuff we can do with it, the terrible stuff that may happen to us with it. And then just a bit of a sort of trek through ideas about how literature might change in society and the way that writers have a role that may evolve because of this. And the way it all kind of intersects with the human mind too, because I'm officially a psychologist. And so I know a little bit about neuroscience, and the neuroscience of what's going to happen to us with AI becoming part of our lives, I think is really fascinating. So
it's interesting that 95% of authors online don't get online marketing. And it's fascinating to me because I've uploaded books on YouTube before. I mean, I'm sorry, on Amazon before, but I just uploaded something and figure, well, they'll find it. But you do need that online marketing push.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Well, I think kind of the historical truth about books is you judge them by their cover. I mean, we're all told not to judge the book by the cover, but what else are we meant to do? You're lucky if fleetingly, when it's first produced in its first 6 months of life, it's in a bookstore and you find it. That's it. And if you're lucky, you're seeing more than the spine. Very often you just see the spine. So our view is that we should judge books by much more than their cover. And we're effectively, with AI, bringing the pages to life, the story itself, the psychological profile. So, I kind of joke a bit about this, but it's true that, you can pick up a book with AI and, figure it out. And we call it extracting its book DNA. And that shows us that this is a book about mackerel fishing in Sweden. Like, okay. But beyond that, it's also about melancholy, cruelty, and depression. Like, it doesn't sound like a great book to read, but it'll be for some people. So actually, it is for some people. And that's the whole point. We're finding audiences for every book because there are some melancholy, depressed people in the world who at least like reading about a bit of cruelty. That's their thing. And so this book is a perfect match for them, and we contextually target them and, psychologically match them. And then the book, fits like a glove to their needs. That same book may also have supplementary themes around it. It's still fishing in Sweden, but it's also about natural beauty, ambition, and escape. So the very same book can find another audience. And that's the amazing thing about books. They're volumes of thoughts. They're sets of complex concepts, that have been assembled by the ingenuity of the human mind. And instead of just letting them sit there in the dark, we're saying every book can be brought to life with simple advertising that exposes a bit of what the story is, but doesn't give it away. And more importantly, says the vibe of this book with which you will connect is X, Y, or Z. And so that psychological matching is what we do.
It's interesting that you were talking about teens in the book, and I think it was like 70% of teens. It's almost like they want their books curated, like they want their Spotify curated, like they want their Netflix curated. They don't go by word of mouth anymore. Like people from, I'm not sure how old you are, but people of our generation, my generation, your generation, I'm sure we're the same generation. We kind of go by word of mouth. Say, hey, what did you think about this book? It's like, oh yeah, try it out. But young folks today, they want something that's going to be cataloged, that's going to be curated, that's going to have reviews. And that's a fascinating study that I noticed.
Well, I mean, if you'll allow me to go off onto kind of one of my sort of themes that comes through thinking about this whole thing. I've got 4 kids. The youngest one is 19. I don't know how many people look at him and say, God, does he do anything? Does he ever do anything except look at his phone? He's got ADHD. He can't concentrate. He doesn't read. He doesn't know anything. And actually, I think it's a really interesting point in kind of the development of civilization. I mean, it's a bit grand to talk about that, and who am I to say it? But there is a notion, if you think about it, the people who we've always kind of venerated as being wise in our society are the ones who've got a hell of a lot in their heads and who can access it quickly. It's like you got a hard disk and a lot of RAM, and you can get through all that stuff there and organize and give it out. And so we think these are doctors, these are lawyers, these are all the professors, all the great people in our lives. I think there's a chance that that's all about to change, because instead of hard disking, I think we're about to become a society of streamers, and the streaming will be organized by AI. So the 19-year-old who looks like he doesn't read, can't concentrate, has ADHD is actually a pre-trained streamer who says, with a little bit of critical thinking, if you ask me what film we should watch at the weekend, I'm going to go to this source, that source, that source, this opinion, my friend there, gather up their thoughts. I don't have to keep it here. I'm just going to hear it, pass it, come to a decision about it, because I've got some critical thinking and I don't think as much of her opinion as I do of his, and that journal doesn't matter as much as this YouTube review. And they've kind of put weights to the data, and then they say, the one we should watch is this. And they've just done this fascinating kind of accumulation of data, organization of it, consideration of it, decision made. Like, that's new. Being able to do that is new, and AI really helps us to do it. You want stuff on this film? Gather, gather, gather. Show me your sources, gather, gather. Put weights more on this, boom, and we're off. So I have a feeling that we're going to be able to make a lot more decisions in a really knowing way because of the advent of AI in the form that we know it today.
You did an interesting thing in the book. You had a lot of historical things in the book, which was interesting. And I enjoyed the search engine section, because I used Yahoo when I was in college, and there was like Site and Ask Jeeves, and then Google came around and just killed everybody. But I never knew about Archie. I had, because I figured, well, Yahoo was like one of the first ones, a web crawler. I never heard of Archie, and Archie came out in 1989.
Yeah.
Did you ever use Archie? Did you ever heard of it? I never heard of it in my life.
No, that took a bit of research, and I thought, oh, I didn't know that either. And I had no idea that Google was about 20th to come out. That was amazing, wasn't it?
It is amazing. What do you think Google did, even Yahoo before it? Like when you saw it, because there was a bunch of web, it wasn't just Archie, it was just a bunch that came after it. What do you think Google did that trumped all the other search engines and websites like that?
God, that's hard to answer really simply. I think at the very least it had a charm. Do you remember the way, more than we kind of see it these days, but when you go onto the Google homepage, there'd be a little vignette, a little motif, a little thing that changed day by day, and it reflected society. It was a bit humorous, and it's sort of a bit cheeky, and it didn't feel too institutional. I think the brand of Google at the very beginning, I don't think it's true anymore. I think it's just become big and bloated, and it's kind of hard to navigate, and it's a pain in the ass a lot of the time now, which is a shame, but it's lost its simplicity and it's embraced complexity. Originally, it was really simple. You want to find something, you do it with a bit of fun, with an easy interface, and it was more effective than others, faster. So it's a decent product performance wrapped up in a likable brand character.
You in chapter 10. I'm just jumping all the way to the end. I'll jump back around.
You're just showing off you've actually read a few pages, and it's very impressive.
I jumped. Yes, I did. Well, I did my best. Like, oh, here's the book. Let me think.
I know you read the beginning, the middle, and the end, which isn't a bad strategy.
Yes. And a few of the extra pages. At the end, you had this thing where you said this section, if you don't want to read the rest, kind of, I'm paraphrasing. This was distilled by Bard. What exactly is Bard? I'm not Bard. I'm sorry. Claude is Claude. What exactly is Claude?
Claude is something that a company called Anthropic produces. So OpenAI produces ChatGPT, Google produces Bard, Anthropic produces Claude, and kind of Meta produces Llama, though it's not as much in our kind of common parlance yet. And there are lots of others, like Perplexity is one that I use quite a lot. It doesn't have a sort of snappier name, but it's another one. And essentially, it's just a chat interface. It's an easy text interface. You don't have to be a developer to access the large language models that contribute to what you get out of them. So Claude is just another one to use. And as I mentioned in the book, and I think they're changing quite fast, so there's no point really kind of saying that we know exactly what they're going to be like now. But I just find they have different natures. So Claude, for example, I find if I'm trying to research something and I just want a kind of slightly amiable companion that'll, give me stuff the way I like and understands when I ask for something in a particular style, Claude does it really well. I find ChatGPT is a bit sort of stiffer, a bit more like you've gone to the doctor and you've taken a deep breath before they put the stethoscope on your chest because it's going to be a bit cold. I just find it a bit cold, but whatever. We all choose our medicine.
Right. Chapter 5, you have you did something brave. You said what people fear about AI. Now, some people would have wrote this type of book and not throw out the cons of why people are fearful of this technology, but you kind of embrace the full on saying like, yeah, down the road, I'll tell you the positives, but I can understand why people might fear artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I did. And, there are loads of reasons why we could fear it. Another sort of big theme, if you like, is that we could be at a point where almost for the first time in society, we're making a different deal. So the deal that we normally make is I will be a decent civilian. I will obey the law. I will do my work and pay my taxes. And the trade with the state is, and in the States is the whole country, the federal system. The trade is you'll provide me safety. You'll provide me education. More or less, you'll provide me with a healthy environment in which to live my days. And meanwhile, you guys take care of all that difficult stuff like nuclear energy and nuclear war and, international relations and all that stuff. I serve my time here and you do that stuff for me. I think what's happening now is that the decisions that we make will be what Google, Anthropic, Meta, Amazon, Tesla, others. Tesla will be coming with big AI too for our lives. It won't just be autonomous machines. And the decisions that they make ethically will affect us more than what the state laws are. And that's really weird, I think, because we're getting into the point where we kind of choose, do we want to live in a Google environment or do we want to live in Florida? Where do I feel comfortable? And the more that we kind of live virtually, the more the rules of these corporations actually will affect our lives. That's quite a big deal. It's only just beginning, but I think that's a really interesting moment in our development.
The Guardian had an article a few weeks ago, and there were some authors who had their books on Amazon, and they found out later that there's a lot of, because Amazon has a lot of artificial intelligence books that people put together and they put up a lot, and they were disturbed because a lot of these books was using some of their content, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
If you were in charge of Amazon, or even with your own company, Shimmer AI, how do you make sure that authors who have published work aren't plagiarized in some ways to protect themselves? How do we also, because we have to embrace the technology, right? Artificial intelligence isn't going anywhere. More people are going to use it, but at the same time, how do we protect ourselves if we're human and we're writing our books and papers, and we want people to buy our materials?
Oh, I think it's a really tricky one, and as I'm sure you're aware, there's a huge amount of lawsuits now, by actors, by musicians, by authors, and many others, who say it's not just about plagiarism; it's also about copyright misuse and what is fair use. Like if I buy a book, is it wrong for me to show it to you? Probably not. I own the book. I didn't rent it. I bought it. When you stream it, it can be a bit difficult or a bit different. Like if you read it on a Kindle rather than buying the paperback, whatever. So there's a lot of copyright stuff, and I really don't know where that's going to end up. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm kind of, without wanting to kind of sidestep it all, I just think that it's kind of hollow talk, empty hot air. If I have a point of view on it. Of course, in principle, what I want is for any originator of content to be given credit for it, and for that credit often to be commercially recognized in terms of revenue. If I create something, it's fair that it's attributed to me, and if any revenue is going to be produced for it, I should get my fair share of it. That's been going on in music. Like I manage an artist, a music artist, and trying to get her money is difficult by the time everybody's taken their slice, and you end up with a tiny fraction. So it's already hard enough for content creators, and we don't need AI taking it all away. I don't think that's going to happen, but it is a risk and it is a fear. On things like plagiarism, it's a different issue because, for example, it's quite helpful. Like I did a LinkedIn post today, and I wrote the stuff that I wanted to write, and then I said to Claude, you know my tone because I've interacted with it enough, and it's learned the way I tend to form sentences and things. I said, can you write in my style something simpler than this because I've made it all a bit complicated? And that was really helpful. Now, what's wrong with that? I don't mind. I'm even a published author. I don't mind that an AI helped me to produce better content today. So plagiarism, it's quite a sort of fancy phrase that you hear people talk about, which is your authorial tone or your authorial voice. AI is pretty good at imitating your authorial voice. And if it's good for me writing my LinkedIn, it could potentially also be bad for generating books. The thing that I kind of ultimately come to, and I'm sorry, do you want me to keep going? It's a really long answer.
No, go ahead.
The neuroscientific part of it is, I think, quite interesting, which I kind of mentioned at the start. You might have heard of Professor Daniel Kahneman. He won a Nobel Prize. Really, he kind of articulated that the human mind has two main systems. System one is implicit. It's our gut feelings. It's, like, whether you think this is going well as a chat between us, and when you shake somebody's hand, whether you like them, even if you've been told they're the greatest person in the world, you might just have like, I don't really like the feel of this guy. That's our instinctive gut human feeling resource that we have inside us. System two is our much more rational, cognitive, evaluative, slower way of thinking. System one is really quick. System two is slow and considered and thoughtful. And because we're clever creatures that express ourselves through words, like we're doing now, we tend to give precedence to system two stuff. Now, I think what's going to happen in the world is that AI is going to do all the system two stuff pretty soon. It's going to run the traffic systems, land the planes, make sure the sewage doesn't end up in the rivers, ensure that the MRI scan doesn't miss the breast cancer threat. It's indefatigable. It'll do 150 million scans without ever blinking, whereas we're all tired and we miss stuff. So I think all the system two stuff is going to be done by AI, which leaves the system one stuff to us because we're weird. We do random collisions of concepts. We make stuff up. We come up with unpredictable thoughts, and AI looks at us and thinks, honestly, what are you people on? What do you do? So to come back after this really long little circuit, and thanks for staying with me, do I think that AI will write books? I think it'll write really crap books because it can't do the system one crazy stuff. It just can't. It doesn't want to. It doesn't know how to. So in a weird way, I think AI is going to make humans more human. So yes, we're going to get lots of plagiarism and lots of artificial intelligence books. And not before too long, we'll be able to spot them. They won't move our souls, whatever those things are. We won't vibe with them, whatever that means. We'll just think, it's a bit dead, that's written by a machine. And our system one will be guiding us through that. It's hard to kid your system one.
So if I'm a publisher or author and I've been on the fence with AI, why should I embrace AI? Because I think we looked at the cons of it, but what's the pros of it? Why should an author and publishers embrace AI then run away from it?
Well, I think there's lots of really just kind of slightly pedestrian but very useful stuff. Like if you have warehousing of books, AI is going to make the warehousing better. If you have to have a sustainability agenda, it'll figure out that the best way to distribute these books is not by DHL, but by UPS, and not by plane, but by road. And, it'll do all of that kind of stuff really well. It also looks at stuff that's hard for humans to get through, like 25-page rights contracts, and you see 100 of them in a week. It's exhausting and they're complicated. Give it to the AI and say, show me where the variances are from our orthodox normal agreement. And it highlights them. Justify what it is, that leads to that variance. Well, there is no justification, or it's this. Okay, well, that's cool. So So going through all of those sorts of things like complex legal arrangements, managing payment systems, which are, referring back to the musical artist I mentioned earlier, that like your earnings are calculated every 180 days and then they're paid out 90 days later and they're on a different period. Like it just breaks our minds and usually defeats our Excel skills as well. And AI can do all of that stuff. So the kind of daily management of complex, routine, predictable tasks, why on earth wouldn't you give that to AI? I think beyond that, in a slightly more helpful to creativity approach, I don't know if you've been to London, where I'm sitting. Have you been to London?
I have not, unfortunately.
Okay, so go to an AI and say, I'm going to London. I'm going to be there for 10 days. What I'm into is a bit of sports. I want to try some non-American food, and I'd like to go where the nightlife's hot or whatever. Can you? And the AI will go and gather that for you, and then you can say, write it for me in a 3-page summary that I can look at on my phone, and it does it. I think that's cool. That's helping you to understand how to live in London if you come over here. Now, let's say you couldn't come over here. You could say, if I went to London, tell me what it is that I should pay attention to, or what would turn me on there. And it can also gather that. So you can do, instead of having to find, $5,000 worth of cash to really kind of wheel yourself around London for 2 weeks, you can sit there and in 3 hours' time, you've kind of lived in your mind in London because the AI has demonstrated to you all the different things. So now you can write a book set in London. You can name the streets that you went to in Shoreditch on your way to Finsbury. You didn't know that before you used your AI, and otherwise you'd have to come here or pick up maps. So researching for authors and in creativity, I think, is brilliantly enhanced by AI as well.
Well, I'll ask you, as a person, not an AI, what is a cool spot for me to go to London and eat and party and all that stuff?
It depends what you're into.
I'm a low-key guy. I like a nice meal, some good music. Just want to have a good time, just soaking up the vibes.
Go to Notting Hill.
Notting Hill. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right,
Start there. It's a laid-back community that's, however, got a lot of fun and got some nice places. It's not as cheap as it used to be, so it's trying a bit of style as well. It's cool. It's fun. There's a lot of good music around Portobello Road.
Speaking of music, you mentioned music a few times. You produced albums. You was part of an independent record company. When it comes to music and AI, have you seen any advances in that technology? As a TikTok person, I've seen a lot of different things where people take Michael Jackson vocals and different songs, which is crazy, but it sounds really good. Yeah. But as a person that's actually has worked in the business, have you seen a lot of advances with AI in music?
I think the sorts of things that you can do, it's like in almost every other field. You can say, I'd like something with a bit of a Caribbean vibe, but could you introduce a bit of Estonian percussion? Like, who the hell's ever done that? And so it'll go and do that and put it together, and you say, that sounds really terrible. I want it to be more harmonious, not disharmonious, and it'll do that. Now introduce a voice, and you can be creative in a way that is governed by your imagination rather than your skills. So the AI is doing all the tooling for you, and you are simply using your brain power. And I'm kind of going back to a couple of the themes that I've been talking about, that it makes us more human. It allows it, I'm not a great musician at all. I play some instruments really badly, but with AI, I could produce music far better than before AI, just by being able to describe. I'm okay with words. I'm not so good with, instruments and the skills needed for them. So I think that'll happen. That's a kind of the production end. I think on the recommendation end, it's just going to become more and more sophisticated. So AI should be able to see that the last 20 songs that you listened to, there is a sub-theme in all the lyrics that you were feeling lonely, but you're lonely in a kind of don't come near me way. Actually, I think I'm happier being lonely than I am being surrounded by fake friendship. It'll get the most subtle readings of things and then say to you, look, I'm not just going to serve you another rhythm and blues song, which is what traditionally recommendation engines have done. It's going to say, I know you like Lonely without fake friendship sort of stuff. So here's some more. There's some from a Chinese musician over there. There's some from a Tanzanian one over here, and it's kind of associating more deeply on psychological profiling. And I mean that in a kind of positive sense, that it gets you much better. So I think AI will do that with music as well.
When was the first time you embraced the artificial intelligence?
In really, really trivial ways. It was things I remember going to a Google building in San Francisco. I just loved the way I could sign in. Like, I don't know what I did, but I gave it almost nothing and said, hey, I'm guessing you're this person. I thought, wow, that's so cool. Could have been a bit creeped out by it. Sort of was a little bit creeped out by it, but I thought it's just too cool. I love it. So, really simple registration systems, task, form completions, all that sort of stuff I kind of thought was cool. And then started hearing about, because I was talking to some developers, and they were talking about, we have noticed that when there's this pattern of 3 men in a bank building in this configuration, there's going to be a robbery. And then they showed me the videos, like whenever you saw 3 guys in this configuration, there was always a robbery. And I thought, that's amazing. You wouldn't see it until it's shown to you. And it's the machines worked out, they just put dots on people and they figure out the location, the distance, the configuration, the time spent. So I began to kind of warm to it that way. And then I started a brand management company where I thought, instead of having a chief marketing officer making all the big decisions and being a prima donna, actually, maybe we'd never do it quite as well as a really gifted chief marketing officer, but we could kind of machine a lot of the decision making and help a lot of brands that don't have the resources to compete with the big guys. They don't have the money or the people. We could help them with a machine that would say, make this move next, and it'll probably go well, or highlight this proposition about your product. So I spent 5 years doing that, and then moved on to Shimmer about a year ago, thinking I wanted to be even purer. The great thing about what we're doing with Shimmer is we read the book, and through that we understand the DNA. We give it to the next machine, the generator, that says, I'll make some ads for that. The ads are then given to the third machine, the deployer, that says, I know where to find these people. I'll put it out into the media channels. And because we're working with stuff that's never been advertised before, we can see the effect of what we're doing. And AI loves feedback loops, and that's what we get.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. You've been in branding for a long time. What makes a successful brand?
I think a successful brand has to have, it'll sound a bit corny, but it has to have a good relationship with its market. Like, if you think about Colgate and Crest, 2 toothpastes. If I said to you, let me do this with you, play along for a second.
Sure.
Tell me in like a sentence, if you imagine a home where Colgate is being used, just describe the home really quickly. The people, the vibe, the decorations, the organization, everything.
Mom, dad, kids. I'm thinking Colgate, like suburbs, rushing around, trying to get kids to school, packing lunches.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Crest. What's that home?
Crest, which is crazy. Crest is almost like urban, could be single, could be a family, could be the same situation. But I see Crest more like the way I live more day to day. And maybe that's because my family bought Crest, so maybe I see it that way.
Yeah.
So
typically what people will say is the Colgate family is more relaxed. It's a bit messier. Nobody's really keeping it ultra tidy. The Crest one is going to be more scientific, a bit colder. They're more grays and cool colors rather than the warm reds and blues and greens of the Colgate home. And what's happening there is that the products are pretty similar. They might even be identical, but the brand has presented a relationship to you where you feel, I'm a homely sort of person whose principal preoccupation is the care and sustenance of family life, versus I'm a bit more introspective and a bit more self-centered, and I actually want my teeth to be scientifically in the best shape they can be today. And that's because the two brands have spoken to you differently and offered you two different worlds to inhabit. So sure, you buy the product, but you're also subscribing to the world and the brand values. Again, I know it sounds corny, but the brand values. So when I pay you my $2 for the tube of toothpaste, it's probably $20 these days, but whatever. I'm not just buying the product from you. I'm subscribing to the values that I feel you emit. And I think every individual has a kind of personal ecosystem of brands. And it's quite tight, So if I've got Colgate in and Crest wants to come along and get into my little ecosystem that I've curated, you've got to do a lot of work to displace Colgate. Like, you've really got to make me unsure that this product's as good, or maybe show me that the owners of Colgate have got some terrible, sexual predatory behavior going on. So they're not a family sort of thing at all, and I'm going to dispose of them now. And so we are having a relationship exchange. I give you my money, I give you my loyalty, I might even give you my advocacy and say to people, you should use Colgate. If I'm doing all that, what are you giving me? You give me a decent product at a decent price. It's got to be that as the starter. But beyond that, it's got to be a world that I can subscribe to that I feel reflects me. Nike, Adidas, that's a difficult one. Which one are you, Nike or Adidas? And when do the others ever get a chance to come in on that? Puma, We face it all the time. Car choices, preferred airlines, restaurants, but certainly all the everyday stuff we do. And that's, again, our system one navigating us, usually saying, I feel more comfortable with this one than that one. And so you make that decision.
Right. I got one more non-AI question. You did Secret Millionaire years ago. It's kind of like our undercover boss here, that I think that's where it came from. What did you take from that experience, going undercover and helping people like that?
The format of the Secret Millionaire, it's similar to the Undercover Boss, but it's what they do is they kind of denude you of all of your material comfort. So they make you live in a place which is not your normal environment. Luckily, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, and I've lived in lots of different types of environments, and I'm not freaked out by having nothing, inverted commas. But they do try and reduce you to that, and they don't, you don't sleep all that well, and they kind of rough you up a bit psychologically. So it was interesting doing that, and just kind of remembering what it's like not to be affluent and not to be successful and not to be, all the things that you might be if you're a millionaire. And then having the opportunity to interact with people without them knowing, where your inverted commas station in life normally is. So it was 11 days. It was quite a long filming period. And I think it was a lot about humility. It was a lot about seeing the way people make arguments for what they're doing. So I dealt with disabled kids' sports, a soup kitchen, a music school, and another one which is a kind of a Christian charity that did great work. And having to decide between 4 different virtuous organizations that were doing good stuff made you kind of see the breadth of philanthropic, charitable work that people do out of the goodness of their hearts, and how hard it is then to choose who to benefact, who to give more to that would really help them. And in that case, I found the Christian one very difficult, because I find the Christian church is incredibly wealthy, and so I always find it weird that they're raising money, every day. Like, you've got tons of money, sell some of the churches, whatever. The soup kitchen I really liked, but then I found that the people who were coming in and kind of getting their free lunches were in the pubs most of the evening that I saw around town. I thought, yeah, you're just taking your free lunch, some of you at least, so I'm not so sure. The very hard one was the disabled kids, which I loved, and they were incredibly good fun to be around, and the work that the people were doing with them was so invigorating for those kids. But the music one, in the end, turned out to be the one that I felt most comfortable about, because they were affecting people's lives in a way that allowed them to express themselves beyond their circumstances. And I've always found music is kind of the lingua franca. as I said, I'm not very good on music, but it's amazing when you sit down, you drum with somebody, and 12 people you don't know, you start beating. You get to beat with them, and you find a kind of common language, and you have a shared experience, and enabling more and more people, particularly underprivileged, as they're sometimes called, people that aren't so lucky in life, to have an opportunity to express themselves fully and creatively, and to have new communities that were positive. A lot of the kids that in the music school had been in prison or had come from places that were tough, and they were spending their days making music and enjoying each other's company as they created stuff. I felt it was the most exposing of how non-verbal interactions can be incredibly uplifting for human beings.
You've had a lot of success. Like you said, you weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You've been very successful. But what keeps you motivated? Like, you could have just cashed out, lived your life on a nice island someplace, but you decided to do Shimmer AI. What keeps you motivated?
It's a hard thing, I'm 61 now, and I'm really 33, and I just cannot grow up. So at the same time as being 33 in my head, I see that there's a diminishing number of days left in your life. And the thing that I found I get the most pleasure from is originating things, not iterating things. So if you give me a business that I could run for you, I might make it a bit better here and there, and make a bit more profit maybe, or find a new revenue stream or something. But it's kind of, I shouldn't dismiss it, because lots of people do amazingly good jobs at that, and it's a hard job to do that. But I find that just fiddling around a bit, and I prefer to have a big new idea. So when you see a truly challenging of the status quo in life, in culture, in society, in national identity, which is what AI is, challenging where we've been before, I just find it irresistible. Like, what could we do that? What small little contribution could I make? And because I understand brands and advertising and those sorts of things, I found a way to identifying an industry and a need that I thought, well, nobody else has ever done this, so I'm going to do it with a team. And it'll be satisfying to know that we created the first true AI-driven advertising business that actually did not quite noble things, but brought stuff which are kind of jewels of human creativity, books, into the light when they've been languishing in the dark. That felt like enough to get me out of bed to do something.
That's a good answer. So let's say you take an average person. They've heard about ChatGPT this year because that was like the rage. And they heard about prompts, but they don't know what prompts are. And we kind of discussed this before, but I don't think people actually know the technical term. Because when we were talking about London and type that stuff in, that's prompts, really. But most people don't know these things. Mm-hmm. What's a really good definition for ChatGPT and prompts for people who heard of it, but they really don't really understand it?
I'd approach it as if you're talking to somebody who can do almost anything for you, like your little genie. And the richer your prompt is, kind of the better. So you would want to say something like, I want you to write me something about making omelets for a politician, like something weird. But I'd like you to help me understand how, you mentioned Anthony Bourdain earlier on, how he'd have done it, and the sort of introduction that I should make if these are the sorts of people I'm going to be serving it to. And I'd like you to do it in my voice, but a bit more cheerful and a bit more confident than I usually am. So you give it all the stuff that you want, and it'll come back with something that's like pretty good. And then you look at it and say, yeah, like not quite so self-confident. You sound cocky there. Rein back the cockiness a bit. And so that's your second prompt. And then the third one will be, the omelet seems a bit plain. This is for quite fancy people. Can you help me understand how to describe why this omelet is a bit fancier? And you just iterate your way towards exactly what you're trying to imagine.
You mentioned oh yeah, go ahead.
It's just contextualizing as much as you can.
You mentioned different industries that embrace AI, like retail, banking, healthcare. We talk about entertainment. Which industry do you think embraced AI the best that you've seen so far?
I think the extraordinary thing is medical advance. I think the pace of development of innovation, of discovering new molecules, new chemicals, of identifying problems with diseases. It's all being done at such high speed by the chips, by the NVIDIA chips that sit in the old graphic processing units that everybody's using. It's basically gaming consoles have been put to work on AI. It's amazing. I think medical research, advanced innovation is unbelievable. And the other place that I think it's really gone, and it kind of makes sense, most of the AI that we see is large language models, and it's there in the title, like they like words. And so the legal profession, look through 100,000 speeding tickets and find the ones where there is a case to defend, like on these 3 criteria, whoomph, and you get 20,000 of them sent back to you immediately. I think where there's just tons and tons of words and tons of data to sift through, it's where AI most succeeds.
All right. So Nadim Sadek, did I say that right?
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you for the conversation. Tell us why they should read this wonderful book from Forbes Books, Shimmer, Don't Shake.
Oh, I mean, I don't want to promote my stuff too much. The thing that's fun about the book, I hope, is A, it's not too long, and B, although I'm serious in it, I'm not it's not a textbook. And although it's focused on publishing, so if you have any interest in where books have come from and where they're going, it has that. Although it's really mainly about why AI has turned up in our lives and what we can do with it. So if you're looking for an easy-ish guide to AI and its place in life, that's in the book.
So when you decide to go back to your list of motorcycles that you wanted to buy, are you going to use AI for that to figure out which one you want to get?
No.
That's the human part of it.
I'm going to put my ass on the seat and turn it on and see what happens.
What makes a good bike? What really catches your eye? Because you say you have a list of 20 something. Which one? What catches your eye when it comes to a bike?
Well, I like technology, so I tend to not go for the really low tech bikes, the retro bikes. I tend to like the more advanced high tech bikes. I'm afraid, although I'm kind of embracing electric vehicles, and actually a couple of them are electric motorbikes, I still love the sound of motorbikes. So the sound has got to be good, the looks have got to be good. But then there's a weird thing. It's just when you ride them, when you go around a corner, the confidence you feel leaning or not, those are the sorts of things. It's very visceral. The thing that I love about riding a bike is it takes me out of my head. I can't think anymore because it takes 100% concentration or else your days are done. It's a dangerous thing, riding bikes. And somehow not being able to think about stuff like AI or not being able to think about, careers or anything else that might preoccupy you as you sit in your car and wait at the lights. You can't do that on the bike. You're there. You're fully occupied. You're very present.
You're in the moment in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. That's a good positive way to end our conversation. So everybody embrace AI. And for our motorcycle enthusiasts, get yourself a bike for the holidays. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. It's been fun talking to you, and I hope my answers haven't been too long. And
no, I like learning from people. Because AI, I'm doing stuff on AI, but I like talking to people who know more than me. So I don't know. I don't have all the answers.
None of us.
Some of us do, but I like to talk to people who have more answers than I do sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's very humble of you. I'm sure you know a lot.
Oh, I do, but not as much as I should sometimes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you.
Same here.